Awesome. Hey guys, thank you for tuning in today. Uh, we have a very special guest today. I'll set the agenda for the session. So, again, we deep dive into the world of the very so trending cryptocurrency. Today, we're going to talk about everything and anything that blockchain relates and talks about what are the terminologies revolving around blockchains. And just recapping from the previous session for people who were present in my last session, uh, a couple of rules that I would strongly request you to adhere. Uh, Avoid asking questions like, "What is a good coin to invest? Where should I put my money?" As always, I would. I am an investor. I try to put my money. I try to put my resources, and I try to put my brain into something that really, really believe in. And similarly, if there is a technology where I've researched, I've believed, I've spoken with multiple people who also share similar ideologies, it makes sense in my head. How do I research about them? What are the key areas or key points which has given me clarity about a particular technology is what the entire topic is all about. So rather than giving you financial advice, which I never do, I will give you rational advice. Using that advice, you can research about certain topics and increase your trust as well as clarity towards this ever so growing world of blockchains as well as cryptocurrency. So, introducing everyone to Parth Shukla, we've been friends since we were kids. He's currently the co founder of a blockchain firm in London. And for the rest of his introduction, I'd rather let Parth do it. Parth, take it from here, bro.
Hi, Mohit. Hi, everyone on the call. Very nice to speak with you all. And yeah, I'll just give a very quick introduction about my background. I did my undergrad at Purdue University in the US. I studied computer engineering, so I'm a through and through nerd. I like technology. I have coded since I was very young, and have enjoyed developing on many different technology stacks, including based on Java-based applications, JavaScript. I've written a lot of backend code for many applications. I work for Deloitte Digital as a architect designing e-commerce solutions for many different firms. Some of them are Chevron, which is a big oil and gas company in the US. And after that, I did my MBA at the University of Cambridge in the UK. And I met a couple of very smart people while I was doing that course. And we together started this startup called Bond 180. It is a fairly sort of financial heavy startup. What we do is we basically connect asset managers, which are big institutions that buy financial assets from banks, to people selling those assets, which are basically investment banks. And we facilitate this process using our proprietary matching engine. And once the asset managers and the banks are sort of matched, we let them transact on a private blockchain. That blockchain is called Corda. It is designed by a company called R3. So yeah, I'll leave it there, and happy to answer any further questions.
Awesome. Thank you for that lovely introduction part. It might be very tech heavy for some of the people here. So I'd play the role of a layman today, where I'd whenever we get really technical, I'd request you to break down certain topics for our audience so that everyone has absolute clarity by the end of this session. So without further ado, we'll start and we'll address the elephant in the room, which is Mr. Bitcoin. Now, we were part just to go into a flashback here, around late '90s, early 2000s, where the technology was seeing a totally different shift in paradigm. We saw the dot com bubble come in, and out of that dot com bubble, we've seen Google, we've seen Amazon. They've taken the world and they absolute rule the e-commerce industry, the consumer industry. And just talking in terms of market cap, I think Apple currently is at I think 2.08 or 2.07 trillion market cap, which is a huge thing. Looking at things that people undermined the dot com, they said that, you know what, everyone needs a website, but within a couple of years the bubble will burst. No one would feel the need. People will switch back to your actual physical ledgers, your yellow pages, and technology won't be recognized. And then obviously we've seen how the world has changed. So my first question to you is, are we in that bubble right now when it comes to blockchain, when it comes to cryptocurrency? as a definition in general? What are your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Um, so I work with a bunch of smart people, and they all say that we are basically in the late '90s when it comes to blockchain. So we're in the late '90s in terms of what the internet was back then. So we still have to see the Googles and the Amazons of the Web3 of the blockchain world sort of come into existence. There are a lot of strong contenders out there, but we're still at the very dawn of the technology sort of gaining mass adoption. And you can see just in the past year the amount of transactions and knowledge about crypto amongst the common general tech savvy audience has increased so much. There's still so many other people who are not tech savvy, who don't even know or bother to understand what blockchain is, and to actually engage in transactions on it. And imagine when that happens, there's no stopping it. And I feel, it'll be commonplace as using an e-commerce website is today.
Awesome, awesome. Makes a lot of sense. So let me share a story of almost like 3 years, 3.5 years back, when I got introduced to the world of cryptocurrency. I was extremely scared to even put in 10,000 or 20,000 bucks into it, because all I've heard about cryptocurrency and blockchain was the supreme volatility it brings along with itself. Now, just because of that volatility, I had a bias that this entire industry, this entire technology is one waste. It's just
Hmm.
like it's a scam of getting more and more people into it and then taking their money, and then volatility is basically whales taking my money, and what will happen to me. So that was my bias. But then, as in when I got deeper into researching about what this technology actually stands for, is something that gave me enough clarity and enough trust to trust this overall ecosystem. So for someone who's entering the world of cryptocurrency, and since it's the talk of the town, every other guy, be it millennials, be it Gen Z, be it people who are 30, 40, everyone's talking about that you should diversify your portfolio, put in this, put in that. Everyone has an expert opinion about the price, about the coin, but no one's really talking about the technology. So if someone's entering into this world of cryptocurrency, what are a couple of few suggestions that you have for them, that they can be well versed a with the technology, so that they put their money in a safe haven rather than in a bias which I did in early on?
Yeah, no, that's a very sensible question. So I think there's almost two different sort of approaches towards, understanding any crypto project, any layer one technology. I always think from the perspective of a developer, and whenever I want to design a new application, my first question is whether it needs blockchain or not, because it's everyone wants to use it, but you have to really understand when you're building any solution, solving any problem, why do you need blockchain at all? And the answer is you need immutability, you need decentralization of trust, and you need to solve a coordination issue across distrusting actors. That's what blockchain effectively is used for. And there are many different takes on how blockchains solve it. There are private blockchains, there are public blockchains. Public blockchains are what we all know is Ethereum, Bitcoin, which are basically chains where anyone can participate, and anyone and everyone participating in the chain can see what the state of the ledger is, and they have to reach consensus together through a consensus algorithm. Whereas private blockchains are closed in nature, and they only involve trusted entities to interact with one another. So I would advise people that when they want to understand about a blockchain, they need to see what the usages of it could be, and those usages depend on how it's implemented. And what I mean by how it's implemented is what consensus algorithm it uses, what sort of admission criteria for nodes it uses, and what is the network design, what is the communication design, what sort of smart contract capability it offers, how extensible are those smart contracts. So I feel like these are the things that I think from a developer's perspective to understand what business problem a specific blockchain can solve for me.
Understood. So, another question which comes to my mind here is immutability. I think a lot of conventional technologies are also providing certain amount of immutability. But when I talk about distrusting factors or mistrusting factors, taking an example of India, a country which has been reigned by corruption for as many years as we know, it's hugely ingrained into our government, into a certain our financial banking systems. We've heard of Punjab National Bank's scams. We've heard of SBI scams. So if I were to incorporate blockchain into my current financial ecosystem, how will we eliminate these scams? Can you just give me a utility?
See, that's such a broad question, and there's so many different kinds of problems that it's hard to say that blockchain will in itself solve everything. But I'll tell you what it does solve. It, as I said before, it is a way to create virtual trust. Trust is something that's, even in real life, it's hard to trust anyone on the street, and especially when there's value at stake in any transaction, or there's coordination needed across entities that inherently distrust each other. There is an inherent tension of trust. So how do you create that in a virtual environment where more and more systems, more and more enterprises are transacting virtually, digitally, rather than in person? How do you create scalable systems where many different distrusting actors are trying to transact? That's where effectively you would have a blockchain solve problems. It would allow many distrusting actors to transact with trust without ever needing to understand who the other person is, what the identity of that other individual is. At least public blockchains would. I saw in the chat that there was a question by NS about what's the point of a private blockchain, and I can just address that. A private blockchain is, a public blockchain would basically solves coordination issues across a very large network where you have everyone that can participate. And the example of it being Bitcoin or Ethereum, you have consensus reach across the entire ledger, and anyone can partake in transactions. Whereas in a private blockchain, a classic example of where that would be beneficial is within banking services, within capital markets, where you have a closed set of banks or asset managers or financial entities that are trading financial assets. They know who each one is, and they want to transact with one another, but there's still a coordination issue. And you don't want these individuals don't want to transact on Ethereum or Bitcoin because they want to keep their transactions private within this members club. So that is where the private blockchain actually sort of helps. It
Awesome,
is
awesome.
decentralized in the sense that it is decentralized within that private network, but it's not. It's sort of a hybrid, so as to say.
Correct, because decentralization is not the only benefit of it. There are multiple aspects of it which a particular enterprise, as Parth said, can utilize to ensure that all the functions that are on the blockchain are utilizing the benefits of it effectively. Now, Parth, moving on to our topic of today. Now, there are multiple blockchains. Now, one of the recent articles that uh, Goldman Sachs released was Bitcoin in the future. They don't see Bitcoin being a store of value because when it comes to value plus utility, there are certain projects which are doing much better in terms of scaling the entire ecosystem. Ethereum being a prominent example. His particular quote was, in the future, in the near future, he sees Ethereum overtaking Bitcoin. Why would someone think of that? Because even if you just look at the market cap, if you look at the overall domination, Bitcoin at a 1.7 trillion market cap, we have Bitcoin dominating 40% of it, while Ethereum is at a meager 19%. So
Yeah.
how do you see this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speculate. I don't have all of the data that Goldman Sachs does. They are far smarter than I am, but I can rationalize their decision making and their views. And the way I can rationalize it is by saying that Ethereum is designed to be customizable, to be extensible. Ethereum has a very rich framework for writing bespoke smart contracts. By what that I mean is that anyone today could take Ethereum's ERC20 interface and create their own token, and which has basically fueled the last 2020 bull run. It's been fueled by two things. One is the institutional adoption of Bitcoin, but more importantly, it is the DeFi craze that has actually fueled this whole bull run, and that is because of the extensible open nature of Ethereum. It is a highly extensible interface to develop on. Bitcoin does not have that flexibility. It's smart contracts. In fact, it's not designed to be a customized blockchain. It has its preordained smart contract logic that it executes, and it has the amount of bitcoins that will be mined is predetermined. So there is a scarcity factor here as well, which makes bitcoin more like a scarce asset similar to gold, and that is why people say that bitcoin is like gold, whereas ethereum is like the US dollar, that you can build entire economies on based on it. That's how I would actually compare the two.
I share the same views as you in this case because I've been extremely bullish on Ethereum since a very long time. I think both of us have been extremely vocal about it. But just to again make it a little more understandable for our audience here, DeFi here stands for decentralized finance projects who are working towards achieving success or scaling solutions in the decentralized finance ecosystem. And that's what DeFi means by definition. Now, since we were talking about Bitcoin and with its own limitations, why it was created as a store of value, but then again, uh, there aren't any smart contracts, there aren't any projects on it, it's just a store of value. How is it a store of value? Like, if you could just shed some light as to what value does Bitcoin hold in terms of a from a retailer's point of view, from an exchange point of view, and from an institutional investor point of view. What are your views on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions in that. I'll try to unpack them one by one. So, I think from a average buyer's perspective, Bitcoin has been mostly used as a speculative source of investment.
Just 1 second.
And
Sorry to break you apart. Before that, if you can just tell me, because we skipped one part, because since we're discussing blockchains, there are two major kind of blockchains which are very prominent in the market, which are, one is a proof of work, which is Ethereum 1.0, and Bitcoin and many other counterparts of Bitcoin which have been derived from the Bitcoin original code. And then
yeah,
there is proof of stake. If you can just quickly explain in the most simplest terms for
yeah,
our
sure.
audience,
Fair,
and
fair.
that'll really help.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going back to my definition of why you need a blockchain, what problem does it solve? Basically, it's a decentralized set of databases, which are nodes. They all maintain a shared ledger, and they try to reach consensus. Basically, you are trying to transact and exchange information with strangers, people who you inherently distrust in a network, and your sort of aim is to reach a common shared understanding of what is true. How you do that is through an automated algorithm, and this algorithm is a key component of any blockchain's design. This is basically a consensus algorithm, and proof of work and proof of stake are basically two flavors of consensus algorithms. Consensus algorithms enable reaching consensus, as the name suggests.
Making a
Proof of
decision
work,
basically.
reaching a common state of the entire blockchain
Correct.
is yeah, what I mean by that.
Yep.
And proof of work is a very computationally intensive consensus algorithm. What it requires is basically miners, which are special sort of actors within the blockchain, to solve cryptographic problems by solving so what they do is basically they take a hash of the existing data set, they add a randomized bit to it, they create a hash output of it, and then they repeat this process until the hash they randomly create is the right hash, and that is then accepted, and basically they claim that this is the right thing, and once everyone reaches that same result, basically the state of the ledger advances. So
Hmm.
you need 51% of the miners to actually reach consensus, and by solving these cryptographic problems, it is computationally intensive. It's not, in my view, a scalable design because it requires miners to be spending a lot of hardware energy doing these randomized trials of hashing. It's designed to be energy, consumptive. I don't think it is scalable in my personal view.
Hmm.
Whereas proof of stake is basically a different way to reach consensus. What proof of stake involves is basically it has different sort of actors called validators. These validators are basically chosen or sort of preordained participants within the chain who stake a certain amount of token currency of that blockchain to validate different blocks that are being added to the chain. Once they validate that block, if they are right, they get the stake back and plus a reward on top of it. So their stake that they've locked in gets rewarded for solving that validation issue. And if they don't, they lose that stake. So instead of requiring 51% of the miners in proof of work scenario, you only need one person to validate in proof of stake. But that person has their own interest to do it correctly because they have a stake that is being sort of embedded into the transaction.
Got it. So, like, just to round up this conversation, basically, in a proof of work, there is the miners are fighting to solve a very, very intensive computational problem to reach a particular state of the ledger. While when 51% of the total miners do that, that's when we achieve that state, correct?
Correct. On proof of work, yes.
Yeah. On proof of stake, we use very, very less energy. So it's, I would say, it's sustainable. It's very uh, in terms of energy usage, in terms of lack of computational energy required. But people who have the maximum stake in that particular, all the blocks are pre-mined here, right?
Yeah, so you validate the blocks. You don't have
Mining.
to do any mining activity. You just validate them.
Okay, awesome. So now, again, coming back to the previous question, Ethereum till now, Ethereum as a blockchain, I think everyone who's entering into Bitcoin, they've heard of only three cryptocurrencies, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin, for obvious for obvious reasons. But we'll focus more on the technology and the scalability bit of it. Currently, as we stand, Ethereum is the only blockchain which has the highest number of decentralized apps or dApps, highest
Yeah,
number of tokens on their blockchain, and the highest number of transactions happening on any blockchain at this moment,
yeah,
which has led to some uncalled problems for which has been creating a huge obstacle for Ethereum to grow both in terms of scalability as well as in terms of price action. So
yeah.
that's called a layer 1 solution of Ethereum which exists. Am I right?
Yeah, layer one is basically any blockchain can be referred to as a layer one. Ethereum is a layer one solution. BTC, Bitcoin is a layer one technology. I've heard a lot of people say ADA, Cardano is a layer one technology. So that's what basically layer one means. Layer two is basically the applications that you build on layer one. So any of the decentralized applications being built on Ethereum are layer two solutions. So whenever we talk about our solution, we say for us, the layer one technology is Corda, which is a private blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
and we're the layer two solution.
Awesome. Now, how does Ethereum? So again, just to reconcile everything that we spoke about, what is special about Ethereum is, yes, as I told you, the numbers. It has the most number of apps, highest number of transactions, highest number of projects, highest number of coins mined, which are ERC20 tokens. But the key thing that makes it unique was its ability to run smart contracts seamlessly. What are smart contracts? They are programs which are run on blockchains, which are cheap, trustworthy, immutable, and fully automated. Fully automated being the keyword. Now, because of its benefits, everyone wants to be on Ethereum, but Ethereum could not handle it. That means, why doesn't it able to handle so many things happening simultaneously is because the limited number of transactions that Ethereum can network can process simultaneously because of the proof of work. That is because of the transaction throughput. The second is that before actually reaching the global consensus or that particular stage which Ethereum wants to reach, it can take a lot of time because of, again, the, excuse me, the proof of work consensus network. So,
Mhm.
keeping these problems in mind, Ethereum came up with the plan of launching the Ethereum 2.0 scalability or a layer 2 solution. What changes in that?
Sorry. It's not Ethereum 2.0 is not a layer. So again, there was a question in the
I got
chat
it.
also.
I got it.
So Ethereum 2.0 is not a layer 2 solution. It is just the next version of Ethereum. So
Correct.
it is still a layer 1 solution.
A layer 2 solution would be something which is built on layer 1, like the dApps.
Exactly. Yeah, like
Correct.
Compound or Aave or any of the applications. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. So, what changes in Ethereum 2.0?
Yeah, so Ethereum 2.0. So first of all, just a bit of information about who's doing it and who's behind Ethereum. So Ethereum was developed by Gavin Wood, who's a British programmer, and Vitalik, who's a Russian sort of. I don't know if he's a developer or not, but yeah, he was the CEO. So they developed Ethereum based on the Bitcoin sort of architecture and drawing inspiration from it back in I think 2015 14. and they yeah, I mean, Ethereum, as you said, for all of its benefit, had this smart contract interface, which basically powered it and made it what it is today. It had a very rich set of features to make it easy for developers to develop applications. But as that happened, due to the proof of work consensus algorithm, as more and more people started building applications, there was more and more adoption. There was more and more people, transacting, exchanging value. This led to network congestion, and by what I mean is that there were basically more people trying to use Ethereum services than the hardware supporting it was capable of sort of doing effective consensus. So this has led to a state where any transaction confirmation on the existing Ethereum network takes a lot of time and is very expensive to do. So, for example, if I want to send some amount of ether from one smart contract address to another on the current Ethereum network, I'd pay around like $10 to $20 in just fee. So if I want to exchange less than that, it's economically unviable to exchange assets. That is what Ethereum 2 is trying to solve. It's trying to create a more scalable, cost effective network on top of the Ethereum 1 architecture. How it is doing it is it's moving away from proof of work to proof of stake as its consensus algorithm. It is creating a concept of shard chains, which are basically parallel chains which are compatible with a sort of main chain. This may be a bit technical, and please feel free to ask me questions. But shard chains basically are sort of not private blockchains, but sort of parts of the main chain that are only for a specific application or for a specific purpose and are yet interoperable with the main chain. So you sort of slice up the actual blockchain into smaller chains, which can still communicate with one another, but their consensus is only within their own smaller chain. So that's why sharding is a big thing in layer one technologies now. And many people are trying to sort of come up with Ethereum competitors. So yeah, those are some of the key sort of things that Ethereum 2 would have.
Got it. Now, talking about certain things which the audience is really excited about and gets really excited about is basically what is the price action of it. Now, in the past, in this latest bull run, a lot of people speculated that Ethereum is going to be highly, highly bullish. But then this bullish nature, we actually saw this bullish nature when Ethereum announced that they're very close to achieving the mainnet for Ethereum 2.0, and we saw a huge surge. But then they did not comply to their roadmap, and they delayed Ethereum 2.0, which saw the price action taking a bit of a back hit. Now, in the meantime, what has happened in the background that Binance Smart Chain came up. Now, Binance Smart Chain, which also has a proof of stake, if I'm not wrong, proof of stake consensus. Now, in this, they are able to achieve transaction fee very, very less. Now, transaction fee or gas fee is the network fee that you pay in order for your transactions to be prioritized. The higher the gas fee you set, the higher priority your transactions get. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, in a Binance Smart Chain, I remember we were having this conversation end of last year when Binance was at a meager $40 or $50, while Ethereum was hovering around a good $1,500, $1,800. Now, within a couple of months, I have seen a zillion projects being launched on Binance Smart Chain. Like
Yeah.
I can't even like count the number of projects because I myself I never thought that I'd be using uh, a pancake swap or a decentralized application. But the number of projects which exist on a Binance chain, it forced me to actually look at those things, and that resulted in a huge, huge price action that I think it almost touched a $700 from a 40. Now it's
Yeah.
hovering
Yeah.
around 350. So, do you think Ethereum also will go through a similar journey once we're closer? What are your speculations
Well,
again?
I mean, see, I am an engineer. I don't know about price. I am not a financial expert, so I don't
Correct.
know how prices correlate. What I can tell you from an application developer's point of view is that BSC is definitely it is sort of an answer to Ethereum, or it is Binance's answer to Ethereum, but it nearly does not have the same network congestion issues that Ethereum has. So that is why it's basically like a refined replica of Ethereum, and it's just a different chain where people are doing similar things. So PancakeSwap is basically Uniswap, but for
Binance
Binance,
Smart Chain, correct.
and it's basically replicating the behavior on Ethereum on Binance. I think that's a way, but you're losing out the existing network value and the economic value on Ethereum. You're sort of creating it all over again on Binance on its own chain, which is fair because Binance has the world's largest user base in terms of an exchange, so it can peddle that to its existing exchange users. So it has a huge sort of volume of people to actually adopt its offerings. Now, moving on to Ethereum 2, as a developer, for me, that is the next stage in the evolution of blockchains because so one of the core reasons why enterprises, especially, don't want to build on public chains is because they would lose their privacy. They like the concept of a blockchain, and that's why they use private blockchains. Polkadot is another chain, and even Ethereum too are claiming to create this paradigm of sharded chains,
Hmm.
which apparently what they claim is will solve this issue of privacy and will allow these sort of sharded chains to operate and yet be compatible with this larger public chain. If they pull it off, and if that's actually true and it works, then I think you would see massive enterprise grade adoption of these chains,
Hmm.
and that would just create it could lead to the creation of a unified sort of blockchain that has both enterprise and public components on the same chain, which is huge. Yeah.
So now you mentioned this term sharding a lot. Although I understand what's the key function of sharding, but if you can simplify it for everyone who's probably hearing it for the first time, or what are the key benefits of sharding? Because it's
Yeah.
been used heavily across the entire every blockchain to a certain extent uses sharding to allow interoperability. So how does that
Yeah.
work? What is sharding?
So yeah, no, sharding is a very old word. In fact, like it has been used in the context of data storage since many years. It's basically a safe way of distributing data storage when you have a constraint of hardware. So if you have a lot of data to store and you need an effective way, and you're let's say you have like 2 terabytes of data and you have a machine that only can store 1 terabyte, rather than trying to store the entire 2 terabyte storage which can't fit on that 1 terabyte hardware, you get another 1 terabyte hardware and you split up your data, you shard it and put it into these two different stores. So that's effectively what sharding is, and you people have started applying the same concept to blockchain because that's also effectively a database, albeit decentralized. And you are basically you're basically splitting up the chain into different mini chains that are all aware of each other's presence, but are sort of they're not constrained by each other's size, by the combined size of the whole chain. So that's effectively what sharding is.
Got it. Got it. I think it clears a certain doubts in my head as well as to what is the exact usage of sharding. So even if I distribute my data into two hard disks of 1 TB, for the data it won't know because the it's talking to each other. For the data, it might be just it might feel as if it's on the same hard disk. Correct? It doesn't change the overall state of the data.
Yeah, I mean, it just basically splits it up and allows the data to be more efficiently stored.
Awesome. Awesome. Leading to faster and seamless transactions.
Yeah,
Awesome. Now we've discussed Ethereum 2.0, and I think the entire world who supports Ethereum, they want the Ethereum 2.0 to come out ASAP. Now, someone who is helping scale Ethereum 2.0 is Polygon. Matic comes from Indian origins. I think the founders are Indian, so
yeah,
it's a I think Maharashtra government is also using the Matic blockchain for COVID related results. I had read it in one of the articles. So how is actually Matic? Some people say that Polygon, or I would refer it to as Polygon because now it's
yeah.
Polygon. It's
They've
the answer.
rebranded. Yeah,
It's the answer for major challenges that face Ethereum today, such as high gas fee, poor user experience, low transaction throughput, and the list goes on. Right. So
yeah.
how does that happen? How do we scale how is basically Polygon helping Ethereum?
Yeah, so I'll be very honest. Polygon is one of the chains that there's so many of them out there. I haven't done my due diligence and research on it, so I'm not the best one to ask about it. But from what I understand, looking at it, is
Hmm.
they basically are they're building the a network of networks is how they call it,
Hmm.
and they have the sharding concept applied to ETH. So what they claim is that they're able to offer the sharding capability already on the existing Ethereum network, which is a huge thing to claim. If that is true, and if their claims are correct, then they are basically saying that they've already solved Ethereum 2's problems already, which is why that project is generating a lot of buzz and interest. But to be honest, I haven't used them. I haven't seen a lot of their developer documentation, so I can't really comment on how much of that is true.
Makes sense. I think this much explanation that they are, I would say, a helping hand to the overall ecosystem that Ethereum wants to achieve. That itself is a huge, I would say, contribution that Polygon is playing in this entire ecosystem. Now, moving on to my favorite blockchain of all time,
Yeah,
Cardano. Now, to give people more context about how the war of blockchains is actually playing out. So Ethereum, where when Ethereum was founded, I think three of the founders are now leading individual projects. Uh, uh, Vitalik has Ethereum. Charles Hoskinson, who was another co-founder, is the founder for Cardano, and for Polkadot, I think
Gavin would. Yeah,
Gavin Wood is the founder for Polkadot. So I think what again, this is an assumption, right? Because they all had a similar outlook towards how they wanted to change the blockchain ecosystem, but due to difference in ideologies, because maybe one wanted more enterprise, maybe one wanted to change the world, or maybe one wanted to just adopt different technologies. And these ideologies we've seen in real lives also, people split up and then start up their own companies because purely on the ideologies part of it, not the technology part of it. And
yeah,
that's what believe happened with Cardano, because the kind of approach that they took, and I'll tell you parts where I would need your explanation here, because again, as a blockchain, they have more or less all the features. They are with the Gogon mainnet coming up. They will also have the capability of deploying smart contracts. But something unique, I'm not sure if it's a pro or if it's a con, that they have a separate programming language, the Haskell
yeah,
programming language. So,
yeah.
as a developer, what are your views on that?
It's a fairly complex programming language that not a lot of developers know.
Hmm.
Haskell is a functional programming language. That means that everything that's written in it is a pure function, which means that it produces a defined result. So there's no you can never be uncertain about the any piece of code not producing a result or hanging in a state where it's not being reaching a defined state. So that's what functional programming languages sort of allow you to achieve, is pure sort of functional oriented approaches and a defined result. Cardano claimed that designing on this would help them create a much more testable and easily testable and scalable blockchain architecture. And they use something called the Ouroboros proof of stake, which is, I guess, a tweak on the existing proof of stake, and it makes it much faster and scalable. Um, I- and they also have this narrative that their blockchain has been designed by PhDs, and it's based on like heavy research of many number of years. And the other thing they have is also a similar sharding sort of concept. So with all of these features combined, they claim that they will have a better ecosystem than ETH and more scalable. So yeah, I mean that's sort of their claim to fame.
Now, in my research, I also found out that they're also working on ADA Pay, which will be an AMM, that is an automated market match DApp, which will make ADA or Cardano as their native currency. Like for BNB, Binance has BNB. On a decentralized version, your Pancake has Cake, Uniswap has Uni. So as soon as that is launched, it will create, I would say, a huge supply shock for Cardano, which would lead to again a very good impact, which I really want towards Cardano. So
Yeah.
as a blockchain, now I've seen everyone follow that path. Ethereum launched. Uniswap, which became like when Uniswap was the only player in terms of decentralized exchanges. I think everyone, at least in the US economy, was spending enough time on Uniswap, discovering gems, discovering newer projects. Then obviously Pancake Swap came and took a huge pie from the overall cake. So that
Good pun.
changed. Yes. Now, do you think every blockchain which builds now or in the near future will have to have one of the main coin as a native currency to scale, or without that also it's possible to scale?
No, I mean you need a native token for any chain to function
Correct.
because is your question, can a chain, can any layer one or blockchain be without a token, a native token? Is
No,
that what you're asking?
they will have a token because again each and every token has its own role to play. My question is, like, if you were to set up your own blockchain and you have a
Yeah.
roadmap, you have to achieve scalability, you have to achieve enough transactions, enough projects. So just by onboarding enough enterprises, can you scale to that level, or you would need the support of an AMM or a decentralized exchange for to get additional revenue? Why do people do that? I want to know the why.
See, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So you're basically talking about how does a layer one solution scale? Like, how do you get more liquidity? How do you get more people, buying their reserves and using them? I mean,
Correct.
and see, there's no no single universal answer because most blockchains are trying to solve different problems. I mean, you have as I said, I'll go back to the public private paradigm. So let me start from the public part first because that's the most relevant for everyone here. On the public part, you do need something like AMM. You need decentralized exchanges because you need liquidity. You need to create a market where people are buying and selling that token and are exchanging other different tokens if that blockchain supports that. And that basically drives transactions. It creates liquidity, and it basically allows different applications to launch their own tokens, for those tokens to raise funding. So a lot of the projects that fuel the DeFi hype raised their funding through decentralized exchanges, where they famously created a pool of a liquidity pool where they launched their tokens on Uni or whatever, and they allowed the market to trade in and out of those tokens, thereby creating a market for their own offering. So in a public blockchain narrative, definitely you need decentralized exchanges. You need to create that liquidity. So you need those constructs to be there to propagate the blockchain and transactions. On the private side, not necessarily. So the blockchain that I use for my application, called Corda, is an enterprise blockchain, and in that there is no requirements for having an exchange or even a native cryptocurrency, because it's simply used for a different purpose. It's used purely within a private network where everyone knows who they are, and they're using it for just consensus rather
Correct.
than other means.
Because if I were to have a native cryptocurrency for a private blockchain which is primarily designed for enterprises, it would be counterproductive. It would create a rift between my
Yeah,
enterprises as well as the price action of the currency, right?
correct.
Correct. So I think that explains a lot. Now we've covered, I think, most of the blockchains, most of the prominent blockchains. Obviously, there are much more in the market. There is Solana, which uses no sharding. There is Neo. There is Oasis. There is, obviously, we discussed Polkadot. But before we start taking questions, because we've been talking for a really really long time
Yeah.
now, the future, since the topic is what are the blockchains, now do you see this as a one horse race, or is it like something where all players, all heroes will play their role, making this world, making the blockchain world a much much better place uh, for all the actors or players around it? uh, so what is your view on it? But before that, since we started with the analogy, right, that during that dot-com bubble we had multiple key heroes coming out from that ecosystem. Now what we see in the current world, in the internet, that time we only thought that www will survive, that is world wide web will survive. But then we saw FTP, which exists for file transfer. We see UDP, which exists for your voice video communications, and POP3 which exists for emails. So if I use the same analogy for blockchain, basically people used different aspects of internet and they all coexist together, solving a very very particular use case, thus making the ecosystem highly comprehensive. Do you see similar things happening for blockchain, or do you have
Yeah.
alternate views to this?
No, no, no. I completely agree. That's very beautifully put, I would say. I mean, what you've said there, I don't think there's. See, the thing is that when the whole concept of decentralization came into being, it was sort of a fu to the existing financial system, and that is what sort of Satoshi Nakamoto's ethos and narrative was in the Bitcoin manifesto, was to sort of create an alternative system for people to be de-risked from central banks and the governments of the world. And that was the core idea. But as the technology has matured, as you said, there are different chains coming into play. They have taken that libertarian ideal, and they're now actually making real use cases. And even enterprises and big banks are getting into it, and they are using the inherent technology for their own private usages. What I think is that there's already a need for people to be more in control of their data. Today's consumer and today's internet user wants to actually know who's using their data, who's tracking their cookies, and they don't want to not be rewarded for it. So there's this whole trend towards Web3, which is basically the new web, which is decentralized. It puts the user at the heart of it, and it allows stakeholders to actually have direct control of their own data. That is the future that is enabled through blockchains. And as you said it, that every different blockchain will play a different role. No one is going to be a clear winner, and there's going to be many different networks with their own flaws and with their own specialities and their offerings that people will be able to use together to actually create a fairer, more transparent internet.
Makes a lot of sense. And since you said that it brings the power back to the user, now the would the correct utility of that would be that either don't give you the permission to use my data, or if you're using my data, you better pay me.
Exactly. Yeah, because which wasn't possible in a centralized Web 2 design, because everything was stored in Google's database where they see, and they peddle your data and sell it to third party providers as they see fit. With a Web 3 architecture and a Web 3 design, since it's all transparent, and since a public blockchain records data that everyone can see and verify, you can directly grant permission and access to your own private information rather than letting Google sell it for you. So yeah, and it puts ultimately power at the hands of the user. There's another concept that I think has a deep meaning. I don't know how many people have read the book Ready Player One, or seen that movie, which is it basically touches on the theme of the metaverse. And the metaverse is basically virtual reality. It's basically a virtual representation of the real world. And in the metaverse, you have real avatars of yourselves. Blockchain as a technology to store identity, to trade goods virtually, is of huge significance in that metaverse paradigm. And once more and more people are getting into gaming and into augmented and virtual reality, you will have your own avatars and your own representations. That's where you would see blockchain really being used to trade in metaverse items and things like that. And that's a huge thing to consider.
Awesome. I'll actually watch this movie because I have not seen it. A lot of people in the comment section, they are really excited about that movie. So I think that brings us to the end of the session. Now we'll start taking a few questions. But before we take questions, just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time and joining us today. The way you can support us is you can follow me on my social handles so that I can reach out to a wider audience and help provide value to more and more people like you who want to know about sales, fundamentals of sales, blockchain, because I really am a big fan of cryptocurrency and I keep talking to Parth about my doubts, keep getting stuff, keep picking his brain on newer concepts. I've been doing that for a really long time, since the time we've known each other. So do give Parth also a follow. He's been really nice and supportive in sharing whatever value or whatever knowledge he's learned over the past years. But for now, I think we're good to take questions. Now, I just Parth, I'll take this question where someone has asked, "What is an oracle?" So what an
Yeah.
oracle does is basically it brings, rather than talking within blockchains, it brings the information from real world onto the blockchain. So the utility of an oracle would be, let's say, betting, for example. If there's a game of Liverpool and Man United, and a lot of people have betted on Liverpool winning, which is the most sensible bet,
Go on.
and the moment Liverpool wins, which is a real world scenario, right? That scenario is fed in using an Oracle. Chainlink is an example, and that Oracle executes all the smart contracts that exist within that blockchain on which the betting system has been designed. So that's the primary function of an Oracle. Betting was just one example, but there are multiple examples. So you can actually
Sorry,
go
so
through that.
what one thing you said. So actually, smart contracts use oracles
Correct.
to verify real world facts. So I guess you said it the other way around. But basically, smart contracts are the ones that call oracles. They're basically like APIs.
Correct.
But those APIs can be used within the decentralized sort of paradigm. Yeah.
Exactly. So even like a lot of apps that we use, right, which talk to each other, they have their APIs integrated within one app to another. And similarly, smart contracts, or right, you like you said, part is like an API which fetches information using an oracle.
Correct. Correct.
Awesome. Now, I think we've missed a lot of questions because the chat has been absolutely overpowered. It's been smashed, and I really enjoy reading such comments. But then let's get some people. I have a few requests. Let's get some people. You can ask for requests if you want. Let me get some. Let me get a few people here. Let me just randomly get people, and they can start asking questions, or you can keep populating the chat with a few questions. I think it's 10:20. We'll be around for another 15 minutes. But I hope you don't have to go anywhere. You have that much time for us.
Yep. So I
Awesome.
think we have a couple of people on.
Awesome.
Hey,
So,
thank you so much for the session. It's been amazing and very informative. Really loved it.
mhm.
Yeah, my question is like, I've except the few coins like Chia and some other, which typically specific on the storage mining, the proof of storage works on proof of storage. I never heard anyone running nodes on like for Bitcoin or like Ethereum. So I mean, like, how do these chains store data? I mean, like, mining is basically like running on GPUs, right? So where do all this data is going? I mean, like, where do these blockchains store their data?
Yeah, so they are recorded. The blocks are spun up by the miners. So they are the ones who are actually sort of when a new transaction is recorded, they're the ones who are creating the block, and the whole ledger is actually each sort of node maintains the state of the ledger. So every blockchain sort of does it differently. For example, in Corda, which is the blockchain that I use, each sort of node stores the copy of the ledger, and as the state of the ledger changes, everyone records that same change. So the answer to your question in that specific blockchain's case is that every node stores the copy of the blockchain, but each chain has sort of a different way of handling this.
Okay, I mean, like, I never heard anyone running a node for Bitcoin or Ethereum. They all run GPUs and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Nobody. Yeah.
because it's very I mean, you need a very powerful hardware to conduct those hashing transactions.
Yeah.
So GPUs basically have the processing capabilities because they're designed for floating point calculations, which is basically they're used to calculate fractions and fractions of calculations, which normal CPUs cannot do. So you're right that there's two parts to it. There's the mining part, but then there's the actual just node part. The miners are the ones who actually validate the transactions, and then there's just the nodes that actually store the data as well.
Okay, so is running a node a profitable business to do in like Ethereum chain?
I mean, I cannot advise you if it's profitable or not because I myself don't run a node, but it requires, from what I understand from people who do it, if you want to really make money, you need a fair bit of you need many different nodes linked together to be able to overcome the electricity cost of running one unit. So I don't think just running one unit would be enough. you would probably need many different units linked together. So you're mining enough of the Bitcoin, and that offsets the cost of the electricity consumption or your usage.
Like for it
Okay,
to be
great. Thank,
for it to be
thank you so much.
profitable, the coin value itself has to be super high as compared to the cost of mining it, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll also get a translator for people like us, because this conversation was in French, and I think a lot of people did not understand. But thanks, Babu, for your question. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have
Thank you.
thank you so much.
we have Dhruv now. Dhruv, what's up?
Hi Mohit, hi Parth. So it was, I think I popped in a bit late, but since I've been here, it was a really great conversation till now. So what my question is a bit different from what's going on. So like I am a programming developer, web developer in mean stack, and I started learning blockchain and I've started learning solidity. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Hmm.
what can be the roadmap for people like me ahead? Like, I've learned a lot about Solidity. I've learned a lot about, the basics like proof of stake, proof of work, or and all the basic terms that have been, thrown around in general. But when
Hmm.
it comes to application development, I don't have, any straightforward roadmap or something like that. Also, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, no. You were saying something. Yeah.
So I was saying कि मतलब at what point can I call myself or something like that कि yeah, now I can do blockchain development or something like that.
See, no one is stopping you from saying that even now. I would say, if but it depends on how much of Solidity you've done. So I can sort of give you a roadmap, because you were asking for a roadmap for a developer, right? So I'd say that getting familiar with, since you already do the mean stack, so I assume you can write JavaScript, and you've been teaching yourself Solidity, which is a very good thing. I would say the very first step is to write your own smart contract using any of the interfaces. So either ERC20 or 721 if you're creating an NFT. Really try to understand the interfaces, and then to try and write your own smart contract with maybe some tweaks to the smart contract logic. You can override some of the functions, you can add your own functionality to it, and then try to deploy that to the testnet. So there are many different testnets on Ethereum. You can try to deploy it and see how your smart contract functions. And then once you have that basic understanding of how smart contracts work, you can then try to explore other, how oracles integrate into smart contracts. You can then even try to look at DAOs, which we didn't talk about today, but which are very existing as well, which is basically decentralized autonomous organizations. So you can then try to, once you understand how smart contracts work, you can actually get a better understanding of the different projects on Ethereum, and you can try to see what interests you, and you can maybe pick one specific field and try to explore with it, try to connect your wallet and transact and see how that works. So yeah, I mean, it's all about curiosity and being willing to learn, I guess.
So various platforms by that you mean Remix, which offers me a set of different remix IDs there for
Yeah, yeah,
Ethereum. So
Truffle, Web3.js, all of those. Yeah, I mean, you obviously need those for deployment. So the libraries that you're mentioning are more for like compiling your smart contracts, deploying them and making that process easy. Obviously, you need to learn those, but to what end is the question? What are you trying to do with the smart contract? These are just infrastructure tools, but what is the actual business problem that you're trying to solve with it? I think it's as important to focus on that as well.
oh, great, great. So, just a follow-up, matlab, I think so this will clear my mind more better. So, like, whenever I started with CRUD functionality, right? Matlab, basic
Hmm.
create, read, update, delete. So, that, matlab, like, I made a to-do list application myself, which helped me understand those things. So, any suggestions from your end? Ke, matlab, this is a thing that I'll try. That will
Yeah.
clear my concepts completely.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, create override an ERC20 interface. Take an ERC20 interface, which is basically the most common token out there, and try
Yeah.
to basic you in the web application paradigm. It's the same thing in the blockchain paradigm. You basically try to extend that ERC20 interface and add your own custom functionality, and see how you can do that is the basic building block, I think.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, Parth. Thank you
Also,
so
one more
much.
suggestion for you, Dhruv. While you're practicing all your skills, you should also follow Parth. And in case of future doubts, you should reach out to him. He's really helpful, and I'm pretty sure he'd be more than happy to help you in terms of if you have any objective questions. But if someone like Parth can help you in your progress, I think you can go a long way.
Definitely, definitely. I'll follow Parth on LinkedIn. I'll send
Yes,
him a connection
Great.
request.
awesome. Now there is a question again, which is uh, quite crucial to the audience here, which is what is the roadmap for a non-technical person to get into blockchain development?
To become a developer. Oh, interesting. If see that's a tough one for me to answer because I never didn't have any non-technical background, but I guess
If you have to
if
teach
you
me, if you have to teach me
yeah,
blockchain development, what would you do? What would you suggest? Because I'm a
it,
non-technical
it,
person.
it
As
comes
not,
down
yeah,
to it comes down to understanding code, right? Because at
yep,
the end of the day it is code. If
correct,
you understand how, you need to first know basic programming.
correct,
If you need to understand how functions and variables and all of that thing works.
correct,
Once you have a basic understanding about those things, I think then you can try to get into blockchain based development, which is a bit more complex because you are thinking about smart contracts and oracles and all these different constructs. So I would say start from, my answer would be start from basic development, the stuff that Dhruv was talking about, CRUD based, which is basically how you interface with a regular like centralized application. And then once you're comfortable with that, then move to the decentralized world. I think that would be the right way to do it.
awesome, awesome. Now, I think we've covered most speakers, but let me take a few questions here. Why does a POS-based blockchain need native currency? Uh,
Yeah,
Proof of
because
stake, yeah,
you,
because you
yeah,
need to
that's
stake, right? Yeah,
exactly. Because you need a mechanism where the network needs to provide you a mechanism where you can stake something and stand to lose it. That's why most proof of stake networks have their own native currency that is the denomination for staking, basically.
correct. And all who are staking can be paid in other crypto like BTC. No, generally staking as a concept. You earn like either API or APR, which is annual percentage in yield or annual percentage in return. You should like research about these two concepts. You get a certain percentage of the same coin, which you can obviously exchange to other major coins like a BTC or Ethereum. But then just for the fact that you're staking on a particular blockchain, that native currency, you get certain percentage. It's like an FD, where if you're locking your particular stake to a certain bank, they will give you like a 5%, 6%, 10% return. Yeah. Which platform can we learn all the technical stuff? Do you have a platform part which you often refer to for your GitHub? I think GitHub is one, right?
No, GitHub is just a repository. I mean, it's just an open source tool where people host their source code. When you say technical stuff, do you mean more for Web3, like for blockchain, or do you mean just
for
generally?
for blockchain, like when you have in your development
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
what
So
are the
I would
platforms that you
say,
refer?
yeah, I mean, it depends on the blockchain that you're building on. Unfortunately, there's no Bible or like singular source of truth. So, for example, if you want to learn Ethereum, I think one of the best sources is to go on Ethereum's documentation. There's a lot of other open source tools out there that you can use to teach yourself Solidity and other like sort of tools related to it. The Web3 JS Foundation has a lot of the Web3 Foundation has a lot of these courses and open source tools that you can use and teach yourself about Ethereum specifically. But if you want to learn a new blockchain like Cardano or Polkadot, then you need to look at its documentation because those are new and not a lot of people are building on them. So if you want to learn those, then you have to look through their documentation on their website and understand how they are, building smart contracts and other things.
Got it, got it. Now another question that pops up in my head, since you mentioned like newer blockchains. Now as since Cardano uses Haskell, right, and someone who's trying to learn, can someone directly learn Haskell, or he has to again go through blockchain development and then learn a specialized version of that, which is Haskell?
No, no. So this is an interesting one because I don't know Haskell myself. So this is a difficult one to answer. I think for Cardano specifically, if you want to develop on Cardano, I
Mm-hmm.
think you would need to get basics of Haskell under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
So it would help for you to understand and know how to code in other functional languages. So getting that concept in your head would be a prerequisite to try to use Cardano and write its smart contracts. But saying that Cardano's smart contract framework is not ready yet, as far as I understand.
Yes, it's
So
not.
so I think that is one of the major challenges towards adoption is getting developers to actually build on them. So
Yeah.
so there's a question: is it similar to Solidity? No, it is not. It's Solidity is not a functional programming language.
Awesome. There's one more question. Do all 51% miners get reward in proof of work? Yes, that's why they're solving that
Yeah,
computational problem to get reward.
yeah.
And they get rewarded in the same native cryptocurrency. I think we can take. Are you aware about Argo? I am not. If you are, feel free to do so. But I think we've covered a lot of questions, and we've been here for a while. So it's time for you to take a break. And more than that, we'll also take a break. It's been a lovely session. Thank you so much, Parth, for devoting your
Yeah.
precious time to us, helping all of us crypto enthusiasts, blockchain fanatics to understand the core principles, the fundamentals behind what's going on, the financial side of things, because I think everyone's so consumed by the financial side of things that they tend to undermine the technology which reigns this. So thank you so much for clearing and painting a very very clear picture for us, and for everyone who was a part of it. Thank you so much for your time, and you can reward us by following us on our social handles. As I said, it helps us grow and reach out to a wider audience, and keep providing such value bombs to more and more people like you. Part, if you want to say a parting note, feel free to do so, or else we're good to go.
No, I mean I really enjoyed the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, and it's good to see that all of you guys are interested in the development part of blockchain, not just the coin trading part. And I think we need more talented developers. So yeah, keep at it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Part. Thank you so much, everyone. See you. Have a lovely night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.